Hello, my name is Wendy Dela Cruz, and I'm the District Assessment Specialist. Thought I'd make this video to talk you through the EOY Aware End-of-Year Checklist. These are some important things that teachers and administrators can be doing to end the year in a good way for Aware and also make it easier to start the year next year. So, as we're going through, I'll first walk you through the checklist, and then if you need help with step-by-step directions for knowing how to do any of these things in Aware, stick around after the checklist and I will walk you through those steps. So, the first thing that we should do is archive all tests, whether you created teacher tests, team tests, or campus tests. This is an important thing to do. The reason that we want to do that is to make sure that if we use them next year, that the data is kept separate. There's a chance when you reuse an assessment from year to year that your data from last year and then the current year could get all jumbled up, and we don't want that data to be mixed together. We want it to be separate. So the other thing that you want to be thinking about when you are working on the assessments is changing the name of your assessments, making sure that the assessment name matches our naming conventions. And the most important thing to make sure that your assessment has is your school name in there. And even if your students have already taken the test, that's okay. I can show you how to add the school name into that assessment afterwards, and it will not mess up any data. Another thing that you want to consider doing is deleting monitor lists if you're a teacher, or deleting monitor groups if you're if you have principal level access. Okay. Well, the reason that we want to do that is usually those lists and groups are tied to the current school year. And next year, if you are a teacher, you might not need access to those same students' information, or a monitor group that you created this year might not apply, might not have the exact same students in them next year. And so that might be something that you would want to consider recreating for next year with your different students. The third thing that you want to do is archive all forms after everyone has completed all their updates, except for any students who will be attending summer school or SSI, because those summer school teachers might need to be making additional changes or adding additional notes to those forms, specifically like the AIP form. The other thing for teachers specifically is exporting and saving any current student data you may want next year. If you're a principal level user, you have access to historical data, but teachers, you do not have access to your historical student data. So next year, you will not be able to have access to how your students performed on previous STAR tests or on district benchmarks or unit tests that you tend to use year after year. And if you're wanting to evaluate your practices, think through the effectiveness of certain lessons or activities that you did, you won't be able to look at your previous student data next year unless you export it and save it. Throughout any of this process, if you need an additional support, you can reach out to me. My email address is wdelac@neisd.net, or you can reach me at my office number 407-0067, or you can also reach Brandy Merriman at her email address bmary@neisd.net, or her office number 407-0049. If you already know how to do all of these steps, then I wish you a wonderful summer, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again next year. But if you need some further steps, some further guidance, stick around and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to archive tests. So we go over to our assessment tab and we find the test that we've made. You might have teacher tests or team tests, and it's a good idea to go through both of those folders and clean them up. So one thing, this teacher has a pending assessment. If I drill down to it and take a look at it, it may or may not be something that I want to keep. I might want to delete it. It doesn't look like there's anything in this assessment. Maybe I was just playing around when I made it. So I go over here to the General tab, scroll down, and then you see delete. If you delete an assessment, it will be gone. You will not be able to recover it. So do this sparingly, only if you're absolutely certain you don't want to keep it and there's no data, no students took the assessment. I'm going to go ahead and press delete. It gives you a warning. Press OK. All right. So now I'm just left with my active administrations, my active tests. I drill down to one of the tests. And then I want to make sure that I check on the name. For example, it's sample test for online testing. It certainly does not follow our district naming conventions. And so it would be preferable for you to change the name of it, at least to include the school. If you do that, that would be very, very helpful. But if you also add the grade level and then the subject, that also is very, very helpful as well. So then after I've changed the name, I can go up here to status, change it from active to archived. And that just, like I said, allows the data to make sure that if you reuse the assessment next year, it just makes sure that your data is kept separate and that it doesn't get jumbled up with all the students from the previous year to the current year. You'll still be able to access the data. You'll still be able to access the assessment and copy it if you want to reuse it next year. So now I'm going to show you how to delete monitor lists. To do that, I come down to the Students tab on the left. And then down below in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see Manage Monitor Lists. If there's anything I show you that is over in the bottom left-hand corner that you do not see, it's probably because your screen is zoomed in and you need to come up to the top right, and it might look like 3 dots, or it might look like, for me, it's a red arrow. If you click on it and then zoom out, then you'll see it appear. So just know that if it's down in the bottom left-hand corner. But I click on Manage My Monitor Lists, and I can see 2 monitor lists that I have currently. So I'm going to click it and then press Delete. And it'll ask you if you are sure you no longer want to view these students. Press OK. These monitor lists primarily are used, I believe, by our special ed teachers or other teachers who are not classroom teachers and don't have students rostered to them. So make sure before you delete them that you have finished accessing those students' informations. If you're updating linguistic accommodations or AIPs or end of year performance levels, make sure that you have finished entering all of that information on students' profiles before you delete, because you will no longer have access to those students on your student tab anymore. So go through and make sure I delete all of them once I'm finished. To look at deleting a monitor group, I switched over to an admin level account, a principal level account. You do the same thing as teachers who are deleting monitor lists. You come down on the student tab, go down to where it says Manage Monitor Groups. And you may or may not have to open up, you may only have one campus, but you still need to open it up. And then find the name of the monitor group and then press Delete. Same thing, make sure that you're finished accessing everything, that you don't need to do any more data analysis with it, and then press OK. The next thing that I'm going to show you, archiving forms, is also done on the Students tab. So in order to do this, I'm going to pull up a list of my students, and I'm just going to type in all. Do not press enter because it will search for students who have the letters ALL in their name. Just come down and click all my students, and then you can go through them one by one, click on them, click on their name, go to forms, and then find any of their forms that you need to archive. Remember, do not archive unless you have finished entering all information for that form for this school year. And also do not archive if the student is going to be attending summer school, because the summer school teacher may need to access and input information onto that form. Once you find the form that you're ready to archive, come over to the right where it says View. And then up at the top of the form is Archive. At this point, before I archive, I could scroll down and I could still make changes to this form that I need to make changes. But once you press archive, you will no longer be able to make any edits. It'll ask you, are you sure you want to deactivate this form? Which that means, again, you're going to be able to view it, but you will not be able to make any further changes. Once you're certain that this is a student that's not attending summer school and all other users have input their edits, make sure you press OK. So you might consider doing this for AIPs, linguistic accommodation forms, and even the end of year performance levels if you're able to archive those different forms once they're complete. The last thing actually that I'm going to show you is exporting student data. And again, this really only applies to classroom teachers who do not have campus level access. So I'm going to go back to Analyze, and I'm going to drill down to a current year assessment that I might want to hold on to for this teacher. One of the best things that I would recommend is coming down to all my students. It will get all of your student data rather than having to open up multiple class periods. Say, for example, if you're like a departmentalized teacher, like this teacher who has multiple blocks of math. Now I'm going to drill down into a district assessment. It by default goes to the student scores quick view. Now, this list of student scores might not be the most helpful information to you as a teacher, but you might want to switch to the teacher summary so that you can get those overall averages of approaches, meets, and masters if you're trying to chase those different performance levels and improve them over time. Once you find the quick view that you want to export, click over here to export to Excel or export to PDF, and then you can save that information on your computer. Another quick view that I find very helpful when you're trying to examine your teacher practices is the student learning standard breakdown. By default, this one's switching to the individual student information. That probably isn't the most helpful information to you since you're not going to be looking at individual students since they will no longer be in your class, but you're looking more for historical data. So a good idea might be to switch to teacher summary so that you can get your overall averages for each of the TEKs on this particular assessment. Or if there are multiple teachers at your campus, you might switch to campus summary so you can get all of your overall averages for these TEKs. So you can be examining your practices and seeing if you're getting better over time. Another important quick view you might think about is the reporting category breakdown. If you look at your data that way, now, this test did not have multiple reporting categories, but if you were looking at a real district benchmark or even a previous STAR test, then you might get a lot of really good information from that. And another one that I like to look at, especially if you are making your own assessments, is looking at the student individual responses. Again, probably not going to be the most helpful looking at the individual student responses because you're looking more for historical information, but you might switch to the teacher view, and then you can look at and see how your students are doing with problematic questions over time. If you need anything for the rest of this school year in closing out the school year or in looking forward to next school year with Aware, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, my name is Wendy Dela Cruz, and I'm the District Assessment Specialist. Thank you.